Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So the Teamsters Union is one of the biggest unions in the country, and they have endorsed a Democrat every election cycle for president going back decades. And it's been a question a lot of people have asked because their current leader was invited to speak at the RNC. He gave a speech at the RNC, did not directly endorse Donald Trump, but still, it does kind of showcase the fact that times are changing. And even though the union bosses are very much in bed with the Democrat Party, very much in bed with them, and even to the detriment of their own workers on most, if not all, issues at this point, times are still changing, and the rank and file in these unions, whether it's the UAW or whether it's Teamsters, they're not exactly, all that favorable for the Democrats at this point. And somebody like Joe Biden, and you could look at this poll because they've polled before, and they released these polls before they made their endorsement, and you look at it, Biden was leading Trump, pre-debate, but also a little bit of it was post-debate by 8 points, but still he didn't have like a clear majority, and a lot of those RFK voters would have probably come home to Donald Trump. And then you look at their polls recently, Donald Trump, among these people, he jumped out to a 26-point lead in this one poll. And then in the other poll, he jumped out to a 27-point lead against Kamala Harris. And this confirms everything I've been saying. Joe Biden had some pull among these, Rust Belt white working class voters because he was familiar to them. Whereas Kamala Harris does not have that pull because she's an out-of-touch San Francisco leftist who's trying to LARP as some sort of moderate. She just comes off as fake. And then when you put Donald Trump against her, the white working class is going to gravitate more towards somebody like Donald Trump. And this kind of is encapsulated in the Teamsters poll. And again, if anything, you think that Teamsters, because they try to justify leaning left, these union bosses, they've tried to for so long, but even they couldn't manufacture some sort of Harris lead in their own polling of their own members. And they have decided that they are not going to endorse Kamala Harris. Now, they're not endorsing Donald Trump either, but their rank and file, by and large, are supporting Trump. But it's just symbolic of the fact that Democrats, it's the realignment that we're seeing here. They've lost control of their own, voter-based demographic. It's not what it used to be. Obama used to run it up in these places, and Donald Trump is running it up in them as well. Democrats need to perform respectably well in order to even have a shot at winning the Rust Belt, especially Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, but Michigan as well. And as of right now, it kind of shows me that they're not doing it. They're not exactly doing it. And that doesn't even take into account the non-union workers in these places, because they're going to be even more and more Republican-leaning. And that's true, but you see a lot of these union workers on the ground, they're not exactly as Democrat as they used to be. And is this kind of something that shows us something that's not entirely in the actual polling that's released by the election mafia? Well, it's possible. Now, Donald Trump currently leads in a lot of these swing states, but nationally he's down by 2. That's still not enough to give Kamala Harris an electoral college win. We talk about the response bias that we see. We talk about the post-debate bumps, regardless of whoever gets the bump. It doesn't mean much in the long run, but in the meantime, it usually just shows the media-declared winner of the debate getting a bump, whether it's Trump against Biden, which I think Trump did obviously improve, or at least Biden lost support after the debate back in June. I'm not disputing that, but Harris is not really gaining voters from that debate. In fact, a lot of the undecideds within these polls, when you look into the polls, it shows Trump gaining. Like the poll in Pennsylvania out of Suffolk showed that Trump actually increased his margin after the debate within that same sample. But when you look at Hillary in 2016, right now she was only up by 1, but the first debate took place in September 19th or whatever, and she shot up after the second debate to a 7-point lead. She was never up by that much. Same thing with Biden in 2020. He was up in the polls before the first debate by around 6. And then after the first debate in October, he led by double digits. He never led by double digits with the electorate that eventually turned out, and we know that. So we'll see what happens in terms of the polling. But one of the things that kind of, I guess, would lend the most credence to the fact that there's been some sort of response bias in the polling is just the raw favorability ratings we've seen for Kamala Harris. She was the most unpopular vice president in the history of our country. And you look at this, we could even zoom in here to July 21st or whatever, when she finally got the nomination. She was down significantly. When they polled head-to-head Trump v. Kamala compared to Trump v. Biden, she was doing like not even a point better, and she was underwater by 15 points, and now she's above water by 2 points, or I guess now it's back to 0.7. That is just something that does not seem to add up. And Gallup, which has kind of been, I guess you would say, one of the gold standards for favorable ratings, and they were chased out of the polling industry after 2012 for various reasons. They don't really poll head-to-head in the presidential race. They used to be the only poll we had in presidential races, or at least one of the very few polls we had. But now they don't do it. They focus on favorability ratings, approval for jobs that the president or the vice president or whatever are doing. And right now, they show Kamala Harris is net favorable. She's underwater by 10 points. She's underwater by 10 in the Gallup poll, which is really something. Because when you look at Donald Trump in that same poll, and we have this right here, I believe, he is underwater. He's a polarizing figure. He has a good share of his own voters who don't like his personality but still vote for him for policy. But you look at this, he's at 91% favorability within the Republican Party, and he's at 46% favorability nationwide, 53% unfavorable. This is roughly what we would be expecting right here when you look at something like this. Trump's underwater with independents, but Kamala's underwater by more because she doesn't have much appeal to these independents. So when you see all these polls out of all these swing states, Kamala's gaining X amount of ground, then you look into the sample and, whether it's weighted poorly or the initial sample, it's just too difficult to weight or whatever. When we see Gallup, one of these, you talk about high quality. A lot of the election mafia people, they say high quality. All these aggregators and whatnot, that's what they decide to put into their aggregate, what they call high quality. Gallup has kind of been known to very well pinpoint this kind of stuff. Same thing with Atlas Intel, same thing with Pew Research. The polls that actually show Donald Trump in a good position, not garbage polls like Quinnipiac that have results that are just unfathomable. There's no way they somehow actually got Trump and Harris within a statistical tie in Wisconsin, but Trump is losing the state of Pennsylvania by more than Mitt Romney lost the state by in 2012. If you believe that, either, you're a sucker for Kamala Harris and you're just going to defend regardless of whatever poll has her up without looking at the poll, or you just happen to be extraordinarily delusional. And honestly, they're just two in the same. They're two in the same. There's no other way to chalk it up. But in terms of where this election is won, we talk about North Carolina. We talk about Georgia. The mail-in requests being down for the Democrats is a net positive at a minimum for Donald Trump. And then we have to talk about this whole ordeal, about the potential that Kamala Harris, and there are signs, you look at the Teamsters poll, you look at what's going on there, if she bottoms out with white working class voters, and by bottom out, I mean she loses about 2% in a state like Wisconsin from 2020 to Donald Trump, it is game over. Trump wins Wisconsin. You don't even have to adjust any of the other demographics. The white working class vote share of the electorate is around 60% of the electorate in Wisconsin. In Pennsylvania, it's 53%. Donald Trump just needs to gain, 1% overall to basically get this election within a tie. If he gains like 1.1%, boom, he wins. It's over. It doesn't matter. He doesn't need to improve in the suburbs, at least among white working class voters, because again, places like Bucks County, there's a lot of white working class voters in Bucks County, and that's something that people always like to gloss over. The suburbs are not always created equal, but Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, if he's able to get, you could go into the Michigan with white working class voters here. The new swingometer here from Cook Political Report. It's a very good one. But if you see if he can improve just around 3 points there, or 4 points maybe, with white working class voters, he probably does need to see a little bit of a dip in, black turnout in Detroit, or some of these, Muslim voters voting third party. It's all a piece to the puzzle. But if he gets 3 to 4% of the white non-college vote on net in terms of the margin, if he improves the margin by that much, it is game over for Kamala Harris in Michigan. It's game over in Pennsylvania, and it's definitely game over in Wisconsin, and that does translate down to North Carolina, Arizona as well. It's not talked about a lot, just so long as he holds his own with white college-educated voters. And again, there's less room to lose in these Rust Belt places like Pennsylvania or Wisconsin, where they're already voting heavily for the Democrats, and there's no real evidence that Donald Trump's going to bottom out with that demographic in those places. But the main focal point is improve your vote share, get your voters to turn out, especially among that white working class demographic. That's going to help Donald Trump across the finish line, as it did in 2016. And when you look at what's going on with the Teamsters, you kind of see this here. And the main takeaway is not, oh, this union didn't endorse the Democrats like they have. That's important, and it's not bad news for Trump, of course. It's great news for Trump. But I think the underrated factor here is Kamala Harris doing worse than pre-debate Biden among their same demographic. And definitely straw polls are a little different than the electronic member poll or the research phone polls, even though the latter two are pretty much identical in terms of their result. But still, it's clear that compared to 2020 Biden, where he actually performed respectably well with white working class voters, Kamala Harris could be in a whole lot of trouble, and that much is very true. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.